Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551. Excuse me. And I am back with a video review. And for this review, we're going to be taking a look at Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition for the Nintendo Switch. A remake slash remaster, depending on how you want to call it, of the original classic on the Wii and Nintendo 3DS. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage, I'll have a link down in the description down below. Or if you see the card that pops up on this YouTube video, though, just click on that and you can take you straight towards any the gameplay footage of me playing Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Now, during the Wii era, though, Nintendo released basically three unique JRPGs: Xenoblade Chronicles, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower. Now, these were games that definitely caught a lot of Nintendo fans' attention and all that stuff. And there were basically North America fans were hoping to play these games on their Wiis and all that stuff. Unfortunately, at the time, though, Nintendo released a statement when people asked whether these games were going to be coming to into North America or anything like that. And at the time, Nintendo of America said that they had no plans at this moment to bring these games over to the Nintendo Wii. This led to a lot of fans being disappointed. On top of that, it also led to some criticism leveled towards Nintendo, as it kind of gave the impression, though, that they don't care. We don't need you anymore. We have the casual audience. We have grandmas, the non-gamers and all that stuff. So we don't need you and all that stuff. And there were a lot of criticism leveled towards Nintendo of America and Nintendo in general, considering the rest of the world was getting, mostly the rest of the world, like Europe and all, was getting this game, but North America wasn't doing it. Some even went as far as to modify their Wiis, taking a risk despite the risk of possibly damaging their warranty and all that stuff, to import these games and play it on their system and all that stuff. It also gave rise to what was called the Operation Rainfall. The idea was to convince Nintendo of America and push them to bring these games over. Now, eventually these games would come over to the Wii, but mostly at the later part of the Wii's life cycle. Xenoblade Chronicles would be released only at the Nintendo World Store and at your local GameStop. Although GameStop ran into its own controversy, as many people, as they were accused of possibly opening the packages and reselling it as used or something like that. So they really kind of got themselves in that kind of controversy. And surprisingly, the game did very well on the Wii. From what I understand, it sold like 1 million copies. Although many kind of believe that they could have sold more had Nintendo maybe brought the game over, rather than have people who weren't going to wait to, modify their Wiis to get the game and all that stuff. But in either case, the game gained a following. It's one of the reasons why we got Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U, and of course Xenoblade Chronicles 2, a launch title for the, one of the launch titles for the Nintendo Switch. So it was kind of interesting last year during one of the directs, I believe it was one of the directs, when they announced that they were creating a definitive edition of the original classic, one that was released, the classic that was released on the Wii and of course on the 3DS. Though it's worth pointing out that Xenoblade Chronicles on the 3DS could only be played on the new 3DS, as you couldn't play it on your old 3DS though. But anyway, now that I have gotten my hands with the game and all that stuff, I will honestly say, based on my time with it though, is that it still is a classic even as we speak, and the game is still as enjoyable as it was when it originally came out, with some caveats that I kind of hope that Monolith could have improved upon from the original release. So why don't we get started with our pros and cons, and we'll start off with the first one, and that is the pro. And the first one I do want to talk about is the gameplay. Now, for those who may or may not be familiar with the Xenoblade Chronicles series, the gameplay is basically a JRPG, but kind of a different approach to a certain degree. Unlike, say, a traditional JRPG, like some of the current ones that are out there, like Octopath Traveler or I Am Setsuna, this one, the Xenoblade basically is sort of unique. You don't have an attack or defend. Your character attacks and defends automatically. The only thing you have are basically what are called arts, and these are basically your special moves and all that stuff. And each art is sort of unique and different. Like, for example, Shulk, if I'm saying the name correctly, has an art where if you move him to the side of the enemy, you could do a lot of damage, or move him to the back and all that stuff. Other arts may maybe buff your character to even, regenerate some of the health they may have lost and all that stuff. So it's sort of a unique combat system that they have in the game, which is kind of fun and all that stuff. Another thing that is done differently in the Xenoblade Chronicles series in general, especially with this one, is that your health regenerates after every battle. So you don't have to worry about anything like potions or anything like that. Although it's worth pointing out, though, don't get too greedy, because if you drop from an extremely high place, you can easily kill yourself, and your health doesn't regenerate while you're in battle unless you're using a health art or anything like that. So kind of be a little bit careful in terms of that. But in terms of the gameplay, though, it's still as enjoyable as it was in the original and 3DS version, and it's still fun, just like it was on Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Xenoblade Chronicles X. The next thing I do want to talk about is the side quests. Now, one of the quirks, or one of the issues I had with the original Xenoblade Chronicles, was that while the side quests can be fun, they were kind of difficult to do to a certain degree. Some of the side quests requires you to attack certain enemies or find certain items and all that stuff, which is all fine and dandy, but it was very difficult because you couldn't know where if you're picking up the right items or not, because in Xenoblade Chronicles, all the items are basically these bright orbs, bright blue orbs and all that stuff, and they could be different items and all that, and it could be kind of difficult to find the right one and all that stuff, especially when it feels like you pretty much have to look all over the map and all that stuff. I will say, as far as the Definitive Edition goes, it does improve upon the side quests. They're a little bit easier to read and understand now. Like, for example, most of the items you'll see an exclamation point, both in the red and the blue one. Blue means that you activated that quest. Red one is that quest hasn't been activated, but you can still get that item or defeat that certain monster and so forth. So let's say, for example, you activate one where you have to attack a certain monster, and you have to go to that area. Along the way, you might find a red exclamation point over an item, in which you probably want to pick that up because that might conclude with another quest that you're doing and so forth. So the point is that the side quest is somewhat of an improvement over the 3DS and Wii version, and they are a little bit easier, so now you can be able to do most of these side quests and so forth. Yeah, some of the side quests are, in a way, some are fetch quests, some are basically attacking certain enemies, though, but I feel like it's much easier now to do these side quests compared to what it was like in the original Wii and 3DS version. And last but not least, I do want to talk about is the visuals. And I will say the visuals of the game, especially the Definitive Edition, looks nice and all. The character models are kind of similar to what Xenoblade Chronicles 2 does to a certain degree, but for the most part, they stay true to what the original one on, from the Wii and 3DS, but it's basically looks more like a high-res version of those games, though. I mean, the character models look like you can see their face and see their expressions and so forth. But definitely a big improvement over what was on the Wii, though. I mean, again, the Wii version wasn't the worst looking game on the Wii, but when compared to games like Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, it wasn't the best looking game either, and all that stuff. So it just adds more to the expression to the characters than it was than the Wii version, which they kind of felt lifeless and all that stuff. And as far as playing the game in portable mode, I honestly have to say, despite some of the controversy as some people had with the resolution of how the game would play in portable mode, honestly, I would say it doesn't look that bad. In fact, I feel like it's an improvement over Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I mean, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 playing in portable mode it was tolerable, but it was pretty obvious to see that the resolution really took a hit. This one, not as much in any way. I mean, the character models, in fact, and the resolution based on it, though, looks way better, at least in my view, way better than what Xenoblade Chronicles 2 did, especially when you were playing the game in portable mode. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, which are the cons. So take a little break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition for the Nintendo Switch. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And there are only really 2 cons based on my time with the game that I could really think of. We'll start with the first one. Now, in the first one, I talked about the visuals and all that stuff, and I thought how the visuals were definitely an improvement to a certain degree. It was definitely an improvement over the Wii and 3DS version. I do feel the visuals are somewhat of an improvement over Xenoblade Chronicles 2, even when playing it in portable mode. That said, though, it is a little bit unfortunate and disappointed to hear that it does not run at 720p when you're playing it in portable mode. I believe it reduces down to what Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was. I think that was 540p or 480p. I'm not 100% sure on that, but in either case, it is unfortunate that I was hoping for Monolith software to make improvements for this one, to maybe, learn from what they did with Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and maybe make some improvement when playing the game visually in portable mode. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Now, that's not to say the visuals are bad or anything like that. I still stand behind the fact that it definitely looks better than what Xenoblade Chronicles 2 did, though, so they definitely made some improvement, but it is a little unfortunate that they could not get the game to run at 720p when playing it in portable mode. And the last con I want to talk about is the arts and the combat. Now, I mentioned the arts and the combat during the pros, and I still think the whole arts and combat stuff is still fun and enjoyable, and even playing it playing Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, it still holds up well, especially when you have to select the arts using the directional button and all that stuff. That said, although the game is still enjoyable and fun, I feel as though Xenoblade Chronicles 2 does it better. I think the way they have their combat art, I think that one I think is better than Definitive Edition. Not that Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition's combat is bad, but the one area that I think Xenoblade Chronicles 2 gets right is that your arts are assigned to, your A, B, X, Y button, though. So you can just hit those buttons when your art is available. You can hit those buttons and not have to worry about moving, looking at your arts on the screen and then using the directional button to select which one it is. It's already assigned to the A, B, X, Y button. And I like that approach over how Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition was, and to a certain degree Xenoblade Chronicles X as well. Again, it doesn't ruin the game or anything like that. The combat arts are still good. It still runs well on Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. It's just that I feel Xenoblade Chronicles 2 does a better job. Overall, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is still a good game, and it's definitely a must-own, especially into your Switch library. The combat and the gameplay and even the story and all that stuff is still as enjoyable as it was when the game originally came out on the Wii and the Nintendo 3DS. I like the fact that they improved the side quests. They're much easier now to do, and you don't feel like you get lost or anything like that. And the visuals of the game looks good. Not only somewhat of improvement over Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but definitely an improvement over the Wii and the 3DS version. It is unfortunate, though, that the game doesn't run at 720p when playing in portable mode. And I will admit, though, and I said this before in the cons, and I'll say it here, I prefer the way the combats and arts are done. I prefer how it's done in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 over how it's done in Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, though. Some might disagree with me on that, but I still stand behind that and so forth. But despite those 2 cons, I still am still enjoying this game. It was a classic when it came out on the Wii and 3DS, and it's still a classic today. And it's definitely a recommendation, especially for JRPG fans, for the Nintendo Switch. I am hoping that it does well enough, and although we've heard some sales numbers, it looks like seems to be some positive signs, though, but I am hoping it does well enough that it convinces Nintendo and Monolith Soft to possibly bring over Xenoblade Chronicles X. I mean, I know they said it would require a lot of money and all that stuff, but I'm hoping it convinces them to maybe do a remaster or a remake of that game and bring that over to the Nintendo Switch. I'm also hoping it will not only convince maybe Monolith Soft to maybe consider bringing games like Disaster Day of Crisis over here. We never got a chance to play that on the Wii over here in North America and all that stuff. But I'm hoping it can also convince Nintendo to consider the idea of maybe, just maybe, doing a remaster or remake and possibly a sequel to two other Operation Rainfall games, The Last Story and Pandora's Tower. I would love to see those games make a comeback. Seeing how Xenoblade Chronicles is starting to find its place among Nintendo fans, I've said this before and I say this again, it's following a similar route to what Fire Emblem was. It was considered very much niche, but now it's becoming more mainstream and getting more attention than people thought. I'm hoping that those two games can also, Last Story and Pandora's Tower, can get another shot, and I'm hoping they could bring those games over to the Nintendo Switch. I'm sure there's an audience that would love to play those games, especially new generation of gamers who may have not played those games during the Wii era. So overall, to me, this is definitely a must-own to have on the Nintendo Switch. Okay, this concludes my video review of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition for the Nintendo Switch. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition? Are you happy that they ported this? Happy that they did a remaster or remake of this classic from the Wii and 3DS era and brought it over to the Nintendo Switch? Are you happy? Do you think the gameplay is still as enjoyable as it was when it was released back on those systems? Are you glad that they improved the side quests? Do you think the visuals look fine and don't look as bad as many people thought it would be in portable mode in any way? Do you think this could convince Monolith to consider, and Nintendo as well, of Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U? How about maybe Pandora's Tower or even The Last Story? Do you think that will convince them to consider bringing those games over? And do you think they might even consider bringing other lost JRPGs that have been released on the 3DS or the Wii era, like say Project X Zone 1 and 2? Why not a port of those, or even maybe a brand new one like Project X Zone 3? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!